This is Manchester City's trophy haul since 2010. On top of this, they are the first team to win 4 Premier Leagues in a row, the second ever English team with a treble, and the only team to reach 100 points in a single Premier League season. On the pitch, City has been nothing short of dominant. But off the pitch, they've been dominating something else: revenue. In 2024, City pulled in €837.8 million. That's more than any English club, and second only to Real Madrid globally. This financial firepower has fueled their rise to the top, but it's also raised eyebrows. Because when you dig into their financials, you start to see patterns. Unusual ones. Ones that make you wonder, is City's growth a business masterclass, or a carefully crafted illusion to allow its rich owner play by his own rules? Let's dive into the financial evolution of Manchester City and the controversy that followed. Manchester City was founded in 1880, but for the purpose of this video, we will take a look at the decade before the takeover. The beginning of this decade is defined by City's relegation to the third tier of English football in 1998. The relegation meant that the club's earnings were severely limited. While we do not have revenue numbers for City specifically, we know that most clubs in that league during that time reported annual income of under £1.4 million. For context, this was less than what bigger clubs like Manchester United earned from a single home match. This, combined with the fact that Manchester City were approximately £13 million in debt at the time, meant that, from a financial perspective, promotion was of utmost importance. The club managed to achieve promotion in 1999, which provided an influx of revenue that helped stabilize the situation. After battling with relegation a couple more times, the club earned Premier League promotion in 2002 and have remained a fixture since. By 2006, City's revenue hit £61.8 million, a club record. Revenue was growing across all 3 major sources. In 2003, City moved from Main Road to the new City of Manchester Stadium. With a capacity of around 48,000, the new stadium allowed for higher matchday income, simply because more people could attend the games. By 2006, matchday revenue alone made up about £16 million of City's total income. Commercial revenue was also on the rise. The club's shirt sponsorship with Thomas Cook was renewed and improved midway through the decade, pushing commercial earnings to around £22 million. Broadcast revenue climbed to £24.2 million, thanks largely to the Premier League's growing media rights deals. Still, without UEFA Champions League participation or deep runs in European tournaments, City's income remained modest compared to the biggest clubs. But in 2008, revenue jumped to £82.3 million, a 45% increase from the year before. Several factors contributed to this surge. The Premier League's new TV deals came into effect, significantly increasing broadcast payouts. City finished in the top half of the table under Sven-Göran Eriksson, which meant higher merit-based payments. And a new kit and sponsorship deal with Le Coq Sportif boosted commercial revenue to £20.5 million. So yes, City saw stable revenue growth throughout the decade, but it still wasn't enough to put them in the same league as England's top clubs. Here's City's revenue from 2005 to 2008, and here's Man United's revenue over the same period. By 2008, United's annual turnover was more than 3 times higher than City's. Even when looking at revenue growth rates, City was far behind United. Let's break that down by revenue category: matchday, broadcasting, and commercial. Take a look at this. While United's commercial revenue grew by more than 30% in those years, City's only grew by 4%. That tells us City struggled to build a commercially appealing brand, and that struggle kept their earnings capped. But that was about to change with the Abu Dhabi takeover. After the club was acquired, it didn't take long for Sheikh Mansour to show he meant business. The club started to spend big on transfers, wages, and managers. This period saw marquee signings at huge fees, as the owners aimed to build a title-winning squad at any cost. Naturally, this level of ambition came with skyrocketing expenses. To give you some context, City's wage bill in 2011 reached £174 million, which was £21 million more than the club's entire revenue for that year. When accounting for other expenses, it meant that City was operating under severe losses. In fact, in the 2010 to 2011 fiscal year, the club announced a loss of £197 million, the largest annual loss in English football history at the time. But the club was able to sustain those losses because it had the financial backing of its new owner. Between 2008 and 2011, Sheikh Mansour pumped over £800 million of his personal wealth into the club. And this wasn't debt. All the money was injected as equity, not loans. In other words, City was handed a blank check. This kind of cash injection was unprecedented in English football and completely changed the game. Other clubs and analysts began voicing concerns that City's free spending was distorting the market. Arsenal's leadership, for example, warned that City's approach was inflating wages across the league. However, at this point, City hadn't actually broken any Premier League rules. There were no effective regulations in place to limit owner spending or restrict how much money a club could lose. City argued that its owner's funding was a legitimate investment, and in many ways it was. It revitalized the club and had a ripple effect on the local economy. But then, in 2011, UEFA introduced the financial fair play regulations, and that changed everything. FFP was designed to protect the long-term health of football clubs by making sure they didn't spend more than they earned. In practice, it capped how much money owners could inject into their clubs out of pocket. From this point on, if clubs wanted to spend more, they had to earn more. So for Manchester City, the focus turned sharply toward growing revenue. And that's exactly what they did. Thanks to a mix of on-pitch success and an aggressive commercial strategy, City's income soared. In 2011, the club's revenue stood at £153 million. By 2015, that number had more than doubled to £353 million. During this time, the club aggressively expanded its sponsorship portfolio, adding a long list of new, regional, and global partners. Combined with booming Premier League TV deals and regular appearances in the UEFA Champions League, City's financial picture improved dramatically. The club's wage-to-revenue ratio, which had been over 100% in 2011, fell to a much more sustainable range of 50 to 60% by the mid-2010s. And in 2015, City reported its first profitable year since the takeover. It took 7 years of relentless revenue growth, but the ownership finally declared the club had become self-sustainable. Fast forward to 2024, and City's revenue hit £715 million. This represented an almost 14 times increase over its 2005 levels. By contrast, Man United's revenue grew just 4.6 times over the same period. City's financial growth was extraordinary by any measure. But in 2018, questions started to surface about how legitimate that growth really was. In November 2018, a series of reports based on leaked internal documents, known as the football leaks, cast serious doubt on the integrity of Manchester City's financial reporting. These files were essentially hacked emails and documents from club officials, and they laid out detailed evidence of how City allegedly manipulated their finances in the early 2000s and 10s to get around the rules. Here's how the scheme allegedly worked. As I mentioned earlier, football clubs typically earn money from 3 main sources: matchday revenue, broadcasting rights, and commercial deals. Clubs don't have much control over the first 2. Matchday income depends on how many fans turn up, and broadcast revenue is largely tied to league deals and on-pitch performance. But commercial revenue? That's a different game entirely. This includes sponsorship deals, things like shirt sponsors, stadium naming rights, training facility partnerships, and more. Now imagine you're a wealthy investor with deep connections to powerful politicians and major corporations in your home country. If you wanted to bend the rules, here's how you could do it. You get one of those friendly companies to sponsor your club. Together, you cook up a sponsorship deal worth far more than what the market would normally pay. On paper, it looks like the club just secured a massive high-paying sponsor. But behind the scenes, you're quietly funneling most of that money back to the sponsoring company through another business you own. The result? It appears as though your club is making huge commercial revenue, when really it's just your money circling back around. And with that inflated income, you can justify spending big on transfers and wages without technically breaking the rules. This is exactly what the leaks accused Manchester City of doing. And when we look at the club's financials, we notice some suspicious things. Take a look at City's commercial revenue between 2005 and 2024. Look at these bars here. In 2011, this segment brought in around £58 million in revenue. However, in 2012, just a year after UEFA's FFP rules went into effect, commercial revenue almost doubled to £112 million. This was largely because of a new deal with Etihad Airways. City initially began partnering with Etihad Airways in 2009, shortly after the takeover. However, the partnership was significantly expanded in 2011 into a 10-year comprehensive deal, covering shirt sponsorship, stadium naming rights, and the new training campus. The package was reported to be around £400 million for the full 10 years, which was an unprecedented sum for the time. Furthermore, by 2013, after City had won the Premier League for the first time, the deal with Etihad went up to £67.5 million a year. To put it into context, the deal Arsenal struck with Emirates in 2004 was valued at £90 million over 15 years. Additionally, in 2011, Chelsea and Tottenham both actively searched the market for a stadium deal in the region of £10 to £15 million a year, but found no serious interest. Naturally, City's deal raised eyebrows. The club's global profile at the time still wasn't on par with the traditional giants of English football. So, how could they command such a massive deal? Well, the leaked emails claimed that Etihad wasn't actually paying the full amount. Instead, a large chunk of the sponsorship money was secretly being covered by Sheikh Mansour's own funds through the Abu Dhabi United Group. One email from 2013 indicated that Etihad only contributed £8 million toward a £67.5 million annual sponsorship, and the remaining £59.5 million came directly from ADUG. And Etihad wasn't the only sponsor raising suspicions. Around the 2010 season, Etisalat, the UAE's state-owned telecom giant, became an official partner of City. By 2012, that deal was reportedly contributing £15 to £17 million per year. But leaked emails later showed City executives openly discussing how the majority of that money was really coming from the owner. One internal memo noted that while the club was due £64.5 million from Etisalat, ADUG would be recovering £30 million of that total, effectively leaving Etisalat on the hook for only £34.5 million. Another similar case involved Abar, a sovereign wealth fund from Abu Dhabi that, at the time, was chaired by Sheikh Mansour. In 2010, City struck a 3.5-year sponsorship deal with Abar. The logo appeared on kits and club media, and the contract was reportedly worth £15 million a year. But leaked correspondence revealed that Abar's CEO had been told the fund was only responsible for £3 million of that total. The other £12 million would come from alternative sources provided by His Highness. So, across multiple sponsors, the pattern was the same. Sponsor names on paper, owner's money behind the scenes. City, for their part, denied any wrongdoing. But the leaks triggered formal investigations, first by UEFA and later by the Premier League, into the club's financial conduct. And those investigations would open a whole new chapter in Manchester City's story. The leaks had essentially handed regulators a roadmap of what to look for: suspicious sponsorship deals, hidden contracts, and failures to disclose key information. So, in 2019, UEFA officially announced it had opened a formal investigation into Manchester City for potential FFP violations. That investigation culminated in February 2020, with UEFA ruling that City had indeed misled regulators about the true sources of their income. As a result of this, City were banned from the UEFA Champions League for 2 seasons and fined €30 million for what UEFA called serious breaches of FFP rules, specifically overstating sponsorship revenue and refusing to cooperate with the investigation. City immediately appealed the decision to the Court of Arbitration for Sport, and in July 2020, the ban was overturned. The court's written decision made 2 things clear. First, many of the alleged violations were outside UEFA's statute of limitations. And second, for the allegations that were still within the allowable time frame, UEFA's evidence wasn't strong enough to prove its case. The court noted that most of the alleged breaches were either not established or time-barred under UEFA's 5-year rule. See, UEFA had charged City in 2019 for violations that allegedly dated back as far as 2012. But the court ruled that anything prior to 2014 couldn't even be considered because it fell outside the 5-year window. So even though the suspicious payments may have happened, they didn't evaluate whether they were legitimate or not, because UEFA had waited too long to bring the charges. As for the sponsorship deals between 2014 and 2016, the ones still within the time limit, the court said the evidence simply wasn't strong enough to uphold UEFA's claims. The arbitrators wrote that insufficient conclusive evidence was presented to confirm City deceived UEFA. In other words, UEFA couldn't conclusively prove that City's Abu Dhabi sponsors were being secretly subsidized by Sheikh Mansour. So, in July 2020, UEFA's case was effectively closed. But that wasn't the end of the story. While UEFA's case was wrapping up, the Premier League's own investigation, quietly launched back in December 2018, was still ongoing behind the scenes. Then, in February 2023, the Premier League charged Manchester City with over 100 alleged breaches of its financial rules following a 4-year investigation. These alleged violations span nearly a decade and cover much of the same ground as the UEFA case, while also going even further back. The league accused City of failing to submit accurate financial information over multiple years. That includes misreporting sponsorship income, underreporting owner spending, and failing to disclose relationships with related parties. Essentially, the Premier League alleges that City misled the league in their financial submissions, hiding how much money was actually being pumped into the club by its ownership. And unlike UEFA, the Premier League doesn't have a 5-year statute of limitations. That means they can go after City for older breaches, including those from the early years of the Abu Dhabi takeover. Now, City, having become the top team in English football, await the Premier League's decision. So, this was the City's entire financial evolution over the 21st century. What do you think? Feel free to put your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you've enjoyed this video, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel.